Hello, everyone. I see that a lot of people are joining now. That's amazing. We're going to give a few minutes for everyone to join, for everyone to get comfortable here. And then we'll start. For all of you guys, you must know that we're going to be recording this and we're going to be sending it afterwards. So please feel free to sit back, relax. You are muted, but we really encourage you to send out any questions via the Q&A. There is at the bottom of your screen a little box where you can ask us anything. We'll be answering any questions we see in the webinar, and also at the end we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you feel that your question was not answered, feel free to have it. And also, if you're a bit shy, you can always leave the Q&A as anonymous. So that will be amazing. Perfect. Many people are joining. Good. So let's start a little bit. In this webinar, we're obviously going to learn from the experts on how we're going to design our pricing strategy. Right now, we're AngelHost and PriceLabs, and I will talk to you a little bit about who we are and what we do, right? So right now we have Richie from PriceLabs. He will be our main speaker. He's right now based in India, so we have a really international crew present here. We also have Adrian, who is our revenue manager. She at AngelHost. Right now, she's in Italy. I'll be your host, so any interruptions will be probably from me. I'm based in Playa del Carmen in Mexico. We have AngelHost's CEO and co-founder, Eduardo, and he's based in Montreal. And we also have Oliver from PriceLabs, who will be answering any PriceLabs related questions here. He is based in the US. So with that, let us transition a little bit about who we are, right? PriceLabs is a revenue management tool, and it's a platform. And us, we are a revenue maximizing service. So we use PriceLabs. We all cater to property managers and property owners, but we all work together, right? So this is why we are hosting this webinar. I'll send it over to Richie so that Richie can explain a little bit more about what PriceLabs is, who they are, and everything. So Richie, take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much, Aranza. Yeah, I'm audible. Okay, super cool. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined in here. Really appreciate it. And I'm very thankful for AngelHost to be doing this webinar with us. As probably many of you know, we are a revenue management platform. We price a lot of properties, particularly for Airbnbs, vacation rentals, apart hotels. That number, 95 plus countries, has changed. I looked at it earlier today. It's about 110 countries, but a lot of countries where we have single listings. So we are looking to change that. As Alanza, if you can go to the next screen. As you guys also know, or some of you may know this, we're very well known for our dynamic pricing product, which is automated rate updates based on what's happening in terms of supply and demand. During COVID, we saw the need of launching market dashboards because a lot of people wanted to put in nuanced strategies or wanted to understand what's happening in the market. And that's where we launched market dashboards. Market dashboards, if you've not looked at them, these are basically personalized dashboards. You can give an address, you can say a radius, and we'll give you what's happening in terms of data, in terms of pricing, in terms of what kind of revenues are we seeing, what kind of reviews are we seeing for listings in that area. We do this today for Airbnb, but very soon we are working on where you'd also see market data for VRBO. And the third product that we have, which was launched about 7 months ago, is Portfolio Analytics, where you can see what's happening. Like it's your business intelligence tool for all the reservations, bookings that you get in, right? If you're not familiar with any of these, feel free to visit our website. and you'll see a chat button at the bottom. So feel free to reach out to us. With that, Eduardo, I'm very excited to have you here. Talk to us about AngelHost and AngelHost service.
Absolutely, Richie. Thanks for the invitation. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for those of you in Europe. So yeah, we are a revenue maximization service like Arantxa was mentioning, and we help both property owners and property investors maximize their portfolio's performance. Just like PriceLabs, we also operate in many different countries around the world. We were founded in 2019. And if we move on to the next slide, and just to give you a very quick overview, because we really want to get into the important part of this webinar, but we basically do a lot of optimizations with our clients' listings. So we do everything from studying the algorithms of Airbnb and Booking.com and VRBO to understand what changes need to happen in our listings to ensure that we rank at the top. We take care of all guest services. And most importantly, we also pay a very close attention to everything related to dynamic pricing. We strongly believe that in today's very competitive environment, unless you're using a dynamic pricing tool and you're monitoring it very carefully, chances are you're leaving money on the table. So we work collaboratively with PriceLabs in doing this. And so we're excited to share with you today how we use the PriceLabs platform and the type of tweaks and optimizations that we do in order to outperform with all the properties that we manage. So with that, back to you, Richie, and we'll get this started.
Thank you, Eduardo. For everyone, the purpose of Eduardo, Adrian, we were chatting about how intensely they use PriceLabs platform and how they very methodically use PriceLabs platform. And so we thought that this would be a good webinar to do where Adrian will show us literally step by step of how she goes about setting up a property. Coming out of this webinar, we of course want you to get an understanding of how do you design your pricing strategy when you're in PriceLabs. There are some basics that we cover about how to get most out of PriceLabs, and then of course increasing your property's performance. The right side, we're going to basically cover a step-by-step process of how do you set up a new property in PriceLabs, and then what kind of KPIs do you look at as you monitor those properties. With that, Adrian, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody from sunny Italy, and thank you, Richie. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you for the invitation. We are a big fan of PriceLabs. We use it since more than 2 years. So as Eduardo mentioned, we are a kind of power user. So we really dig deep into all the settings, all the new dashboards and analytics, what you guys are creating and continuously. So yeah, Richie, let's share my screen. Let's start it. Okay,
let's do it. Let's do it.
So
also for everyone who's listening in, it also helps us find a lot of errors or things that we should improve in the platform. So truly a very, very, very power user of PriceLabs platform. So the way we've thought about today's webinar is essentially Adrian's a revenue manager, and Eduardo and AngelHost team basically bring properties to Adrian to saying, can you help us set these up so that the customers or the customers that they're signing up can make more revenue. For today's webinar, we're basically kind of a role play, and we're going to look at a 2-bedroom property that Adrian's received freshly in Miami market. And so with that, Adrian, so you have a 2-bedroom property, new property. What is it that generally goes into your head as you're thinking about setting up a property? What questions do you ask your sales team or whatever?
So first of all, once you get a new property in a market like Miami downtown, as an example, so the first thing starts by understanding your market and your competitors, because you are not alone in the market, right? We have other 717 active listings in that area. So it's really important to narrow down the map and look at the characteristics, what your property does have. So as a first step to create your comp set, you have to consider the size of the property. In this case, we have a 2-bedroom property. So here you can filter for all 2-bedroom properties. Then the location, of course, here we are in Miami downtown. That's why it's really important, as Richie mentioned before, that you have to apply a radius for the address, because the location makes a big difference in the rates if you are really at the downtown or in the suburbs, right? Then another thing to consider, the amenities. Do you have a pool or a hot tub or any kind of unique amenities where people are willing to pay more? So these are the first things to consider. And also, you really need to know what price range your property is. Is it a budget-friendly or a higher-end property? But this decision shouldn't be sentimental, but based on the market data and based to similar listings. So that's the first step to create your own comp set.
Very cool. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with PriceLabs platform, what you're looking at right now is our market dashboards, where, like I said, you can determine the address and the radius, and it'll tell you how many properties and give you data about those properties. And what Adrian also did, and you can easily find it in our help articles. But Adrian, if you can scroll up just for that map. Yeah, there you go. So that's you're seeing the Miami region, and Adrian's already created certain comps, which we're going to look at comp sets. But you can very easily see all the properties that we're tracking in Miami market, and you can create comp sets based on various variables. Adrian, what kind of variables do you typically use? Of course, there is the price and reviews, but anything else that you typically use when you're thinking about comp sets?
So absolutely, let's go to the other dashboard where we have already a comp set created. So I think to get a clear picture of the real performing properties, it's really important to monitor just the properties who are really at the market and they are performing. So exclude those outliers, like properties with 0 occupancy rate, with 0 reviews, or even properties with 100% of occupancy rate, with where the calendar is blocked for the next 2, 3, 4 months, because those listings, in most of the cases, have a very high or a very low rate, and they are never get any bookings. So this would actually screw up your pricing decision, right? So it's really important that you clean up and filter to see only performing properties to get a clear picture of your competitive set. I know it takes time, but I really recommend to dig deep and take that time to start to set up your property and your competitive set.
Very cool. Okay, so we have created a comp set. What are you looking at as you're setting up a property in PriceLabs? What are you looking at in that comp set?
So, for example, in the comp set, of course, once you created your comp set, you will know the supply of the properties, how many similar properties are in the market, and how they are behaving. What are the market trends? So if we go to the market summary, here you can clearly see in a summary how many active listings there are, what is the price, what is the average length of stay, and the average lead time, booking window. Also scrolling down here in the market history, you can clearly analyze the seasonality of the property and the market to know what is the low, high season, is there any shoulder season or any off season, to decide how to set up your rates in the future.
Got it. And just for like we do take care of seasonality we do take care of seasonality in an automated fashion. But in case if you're looking to see what kind of seasonality happens in your market, you can see it from this graph. It goes back about 12 months in most markets. So caveat that with some of the COVID activity that has maybe stopped it from actually like the occupancies or true seasonality that has shown up, that will show up, right? And I don't know why I'm fumbling my words so much, but anyway, cool. So you've looked at some seasonalities, you've looked at some supply. One of the core things that people do in PriceLabs is you should set up your minimum rate, right? That's the lowest, and I'm sure like as owners, the owners that you work with, they have certain minimum rates in mind or whatever, right? How do you go about thinking about the minimum rate for your property?
Exactly, Richie. So I think really important. So that's why once you know
Adrian,
what is your lowest.
Hey guys, for anyone who's listening in, there's a Q&A box at the bottom. You'll see a Q&A thing. So if you have questions, type them in Q&A. Easier for us to manage, not in the chat box. Chat box becomes a little bit harder to manage. So type them in Q&A. And sorry to interrupt you, Adrian. Okay, so we are trying to set up minimum prices. Richie. How do you think about that?
Exactly. So once you know what is the lowest season in your market, think about the minimum rate as the worst case scenario, right? During the low and off season. So during the low season, what would be the lowest rate in the market, right? So I will really go down at least to the 25th percentile rate price point, and even slightly lower. And why? Because whenever there is an off or low season, and for example, now September in Miami, normally it's a low season, and if the occupancy rate is at 40% overall, 60% of the total supply will remain empty. So you really want to be competitive with the market and capture those bookings which are happening in that period. And really important, think about the minimum rate as just, don't think about as a flat rate, because you have dynamic pricing tool. So it would only kick in some certain low demand nights, right, Richie? So don't be afraid to use a minimum rate and go low with that minimum rate, because it's not a flat rate. It's not a default rate.
Exactly. And one additional thing to add on this, Adrian, if you just go up on the occupancy graph. Yeah, there you go. So one thing that I can see, the green line is kind of the occupancy graph for that market, for that neighborhood. And in this one, what I can also see is that the occupancy in the last, since whatever that date is, maybe September, right? Since September 2020, it's rarely below 40%, right? So I could actually, like, if I could put my minimum price at around 30th or 40th percentile of the market still, and don't have to go all the way to 15, 20%, right? Because there is occupancy even happening at that percentile. Of the, like 40% of the market is getting booked still, right? So that's the other way. And in some markets, you might see it go down to 5-10% in some seasons, in which case you may need to rethink about your minimum price and say, hey, it's not just 25% enough, maybe I need to go down further. But let me ask you another question, Adrian, which is, you're a revenue manager, and Eduardo or someone else from your team is dealing with the customers maybe, and the owners have a minimum stay or minimum price in mind that could be higher than, and often it is higher than what sometimes is realistic, right? How do you guys have that conversation? I know, Adrian, Eduardo.
Oh, that's a very good point, Richie, actually. Yes, we do. And I think everybody does have this conversation with owners, right? And I think one of the first, let's say, metric when the minimum rate is too high or the rates are too high is the performance and the revenue itself of the property. So whenever a property is not performing, that's a red flag. That means that the rates are too high with respect to the market. And here in PriceLabs, you can easily got the market data and the rates where similar properties are and what they are pricing. So data speaks for itself. So we usually share all the data with the owners to show that the requested minimum rate is too high respect to the market.
Very, very good. So then you just like send them a screenshot of something, or how does that typically work? Eduardo, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think we do spend a lot of time in education because as Adrian and you have, everybody has experienced this, right? An owner that comes and says, I won't rent my property for less than $200 a night. And we always question them, right? Of course, we want them to be profitable, and we wouldn't want them to rent a property at a price that either, you know, attracts the wrong market or maybe just simply not profitable. But once we define what is strictly needed and what would be strictly, you know, the minimum to achieve profitability, we really try to show them with data what is the difference between sometimes just lowering that rate a few percentage points can make such a big difference in the occupancy rate and such a big difference in the revenue. So I think education is critical here. And we do produce some really nice customized reports because, as Adrian was saying, a lot of people are very visual. They want to understand, why are you suggesting this? So education definitely helps.
Very cool, very cool. And absolutely right. And one additional thing that I wanted to add on, by the way, going back to minimum rates, is you can set in one minimum rate, or if you really want to, in PriceLabs, you can also set up seasonal minimum rates so that you know, you're not going below a certain threshold, or if your owners have a certain minimum threshold. And Oliver, can you paste the seasonal rates link in the chat so that if someone wants to see that, how do they set up seasonal minimum rates, they can find that.
Will do,
Cool.
Richie. Yeah.
So Adrian, we've kind of figured out minimum rates, and we know there's a field in PriceLabs where you can set up minimum rates. Are you done? Is there anything else that you do? Is minimum rate the only thing that you worry about?
So no, of course you have to set up the base price of the property, but before we jump to the base price, just to add about the minimum rates, also think about the minimum rate as you mentioned for the seasonality periods, right? Whenever you have a special events or a high demand holiday like Christmas, New Year's Eve, or for Miami, they actually confirmed the Grand Prix for next year. So you really want to make sure that your rates are high enough and you don't get any bookings far out with a low rate, right?
Yeah, yeah. And to do that, like normally PriceLabs will increase rates based on market activity. But if you want to go and proactively do some of that, you can then use date level overrides and set minimum price on date level overrides. Dropping some things here, but also if you see Adrian's screen and if you see that question mark on the right bottom, that question mark, if you click that, you can easily search things. Cool. Okay, base rate, mate. Adrian, how are you going to think about base rate?
So I think about base rate, you should start at the average of the market. And not only the market, but the comp set in the price point where your property is. So start at the average rate of the similar properties in your market. And from there, you can make any adjustments necessary in the future. But at the very beginning, it's really important to be competitive.
Yeah, yeah, true. And like if you're very Excel savvy, you can also download CSV. I'm sure, Adrian, you do that, where you download CSV and look at some of that data.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I love this new feature, Richie, actually.
Yeah. So you can, yeah, if you're Excel savvy, you can also download CSV and look at that data. Also on dynamic pricing itself, there is a help me choose your base price? Oliver, I don't know if we have a video for that, but if there is, can you drop in a link for how that base price thing works? Okay, so minimum stays, base price, we are good to go. Can we turn on sync in PriceLabs?
So not yet. I mean, normally any short-term rental property has a minimum stay setting, right? And in PriceLabs, you can set up your minimum stay, and what I really love, that you can set up a dynamic minimum stay setting.
Yeah.
So for different booking window, for different days before arrival. So here in the length of stay of booking window, in the graph, as you can see, there is a lot of information how long people are booking by different booking window.
Yeah.
So for example, here in this graph, you can see that most of the people are booking actually for between 3 and 4 days. However, this is slightly changing once you are getting closer to the date and once you get far out. So to avoid that you get today a reservation far out with over 6 months only for a 3-night stay, because as you can see, the demand is not as high. So most of the bookings are happening in that time frame. So why not try to attract people for very far out who are looking for a 5 or 6 day stay, right? So to avoid that a weekend, 6 months from here is just blocked, and then you are remaining with the midweeks, which is usually more difficult to sell respect to the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so if like this can be an intimidating graph to look at, but it's actually a very, very helpful graph also. Adrian, do you want to just describe what are we looking at? Like just to make everyone familiar with what the graph is?
Absolutely. So here you can see the booking window by number of bookings by length of stay. So divided by booking window, you can clearly see how long people are booking. So how many bookings are coming for the different length of stay. For example, if we look at the time period, the booking window between 2 and 4 weeks, you can clearly see that most of the bookings are coming for a length of stay of 3 and 4 days. Once we are getting closer, also, for example, between 2 and 6 days, the shorter stays are starting to increase. So more reservation for a 2-night stay are increasing respect to a 3-4 days. So it's a really helpful graph to know and to actually maximize and increase your occupancy rate based on the booking window and how long people are booking. So from this graph, what I would do, I would certainly apply a dynamic minimum stay strategy for last minute reservation, for a default minimum stay, and for far out bookings. Because for far out bookings, I would like to attract people who are booking longer. And for the last minute bookings, where I know that the booking window usually is around 2 and 4 weeks, I want to attract, I can open the calendar and get also 2-night stay if I still have any availability in the calendar left.
Got it. Yeah. And I'm assuming that means that you use the rolling minimum stay feature that PriceLabs has, so that you can have close and far out.
Absolutely.
Super cool. If no one's, I'm assuming everyone by now uses that in PriceLabs. If you're not, Oliver will once again leave a link of how that minimum stay thing works. So Adrian, like, why do you use a minimum stay? Like, a lot of people are not even familiar with why use minimum stay.
So why use a minimum stay? Because normally it, of course, depends which type of property do you have. about the size. If it's a studio or a 5-bedroom property, I mean, a 5-bedroom property, you really don't want to just sell for one night. A studio instead will have more demand for 1 night, 2 night stays with respect to a bigger apartment. Or depend also of your destination. If you are in an urban destination, of course, we know that in city destination, people are spending shorter stays, respecting a leisure destination like at the beach or in the mountain. So depend of the destination and the size and type of the property, I really recommend to set up a minimum stay. For example, for a 5-bedroom villa at the beach, I really don't want to get a 1 night stay reservation here and there, which will block my calendar. And therefore I cannot maximize the occupancy rate and the revenue for that property.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I see that happen quite a bit, where people don't have minimum stays or don't have, are not protecting their far out calendars. And they get those like sporadic bookings on their far out calendars, which really impacts, like eventually revenue is how many nights you sell and what price point you sell at, right? And minimum stay really helps you really tone down or like control how many nights you sell, right? Otherwise, if you get those sporadic bookings, like the worst is when you don't have, like you're in a weekend market and you get 1 night weekend bookings. Absolutely the worst.
One of the things, Richie,
exactly, Richie.
One of the things that we keep telling our clients is that when times are good, like when the markets are recovering, be patient, right? So it's very tempting to say, hey, I got a 3-night stay for January. Well, you could have gotten a 5-night stay. I mean, there's time to book January. So set up your minimum stays longer. That way you can secure a better reservation now. And if you don't secure that reservation, you have time to secure it in the coming months, right? So when times are good, and it's very different, of course, during times of COVID, right? You're trying to secure those reservations as quickly as possible. So it's important to take into account the exactly your market and how is your market, especially now with COVID, you know, how is your market reacting? How could it react to further closures? So it's very important to keep those things in mind as well. And I know that Adrian looks into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can kind of see it in this graph too, where like a lot of bookings come in that 2-day to 4-week period. There are some that still come in 1 to 2 months, but outside of 2 months, it's like it's tapering down. So if your booking window is like there are 2 more months remaining, don't panic. A lot of bookings are going to come in the last 2 months, right? And it could get very different for each market, right? So don't like, sometimes people start to get anxious. It's been like, I'm not booked for my November or December. There's time, depending on the market, depending on whatever's happening, there could be time. Anyway, so Adrian, we've identified how to do minimum price. We have identified how to do base price. We have talked about minimum stays. Anything else that you do or look at, or are we ready to like turn on the property and go to sync?
So just a quick note on going just back here in days of week, occupancy and price factor. So of course, with the dynamic pricing tool, you already have the adjustments for the days of week between midweek and weekends. However, whenever you know that you are in a market where mainly get bookings during the weekends, and you see that you start to perform really well and your occupancy rate is always high for the weekends, just put an additional premium for Friday and Saturday, and maybe just lower the rates for Tuesday and Wednesday to capture those few bookings, or just to try to get longer bookings, a week longer or 5 days longer bookings during the weekend, not just for Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, the algorithm should take care of a lot of it, but sometimes if you're performing very differentially to the market, it might make sense to go in and look at that day of week factor as well. One of the things to look at your own, and I know we won't have time in this webinar about portfolio analytics, but one of the things that you can do to look at your own performance is look at the portfolio analytics, which is one of the tabs in PriceLabs, where you can see what's happening in the market. Adrian, I don't want you to go to portfolio analytics, but do you use it at all?
Yeah, we do use it. And of course, we have internal reports as well, but we do use the portfolio analytics as well, Richie.
Very cool. So, cool. So I'm assuming we're ready to turn on the sync for this 2-bedroom in Miami that we have recently, that Eduardo has so painstakingly has brought to you. We have set minimum, we have set base price, we have set minimum stays, we have looked at some day of week occupancies, ready to sync?
I would say yes. Just a quick note here, and I know it's not, you cannot apply in PriceLabs, at least with our PMS, and I don't know with other PMS it is possible, but the cancellation policy has a really big impact also on the performance of the properties. So here you can see a really great graph to know the percentage of the listings and the percentage of the bookings made for the different cancellation policies. So I really recommend to take time and analyze what is the cancellation policy in the market most used, and where bookings are coming for. For example, here, let's say half and half moderate and strict cancellation policy. So bookings are made for moderate and strict cancellation policy. However, here in this market, for example, if you have a flexible cancellation policy, maybe you would like to rethink about and apply a more stricter cancellation policy to avoid that you will get any last-minute cancellation for the next upcoming high season, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think, I mean, one of the things, so there is pricing, but then there are these restrictions and policies which truly enable you to maximize your revenue, right? Absolutely. So cancellation policies, you can, if your PMS allows you, yes. Otherwise, I'm guessing you can normally set it in the OTA, Adrian?
Or in the PMS, exactly, Richie.
Yeah, cool. So, ready to sync now? Are we ready to sync now? Please say yes.
Yes, Richie. Let's sync the property.
Right. So we have synced the property, and what happens next? What do you do? How often do you come back to look at pricing or look at something like what's happening? What's happening after you've synced the property?
So Richie, after you sync the property, then the work starts.
Okay.
Let's say. So I really recommend to monitor the performance of your properties on a daily basis, to be up to date what is happening with your property and what is happening in the market. And this way you can make any adjustments in real time. For example, the pickup report or the booking velocity of the property will tell how your property is performing, right? If a property, for example, doesn't get any reservation, but the market does, that's a red flag that your rates might be too high. In the other way, in the opposite side, if your property is overperforming and you get a lot of bookings and you get booked very fast, that's also a red flag that you are underpriced. So you have space to increase your rates. I really recommend to monitor your performance and the booking velocity of the property, and of course the KPIs as ADR, occupancy rate, the revenue, and not only to see how is your booking window versus to the market. If you are getting just, for example, if you are getting just only last minute reservation, but the average booking window in the market is at 30 days, that's also a sign that there is something wrong with your price settings, with the minimum rate and the base rate. So you have to review it.
Yeah. One thing that you said every day, I would like, you're
Yeah, but
too
at least
frequently in there.
at least
Not everyone needs
weekly,
to go
at
in there
least
every day.
weekly. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, weekly, I would agree. Especially in the initial few weeks of setting up PriceLabs, you may want to go in there weekly to see So you talked about booking velocity. Can you describe what is booking velocity, Adrian?
So booking velocity, how fast you're booking, how fast your property is getting bookings. So for example, if in this week you received, let's say 10 bookings, and you make some adjustments on the rates, increasing it or decreasing it, you will see that it will have an impact on the next week. So the booking velocity should be, shouldn't be decreased, but of course by seasonality can happen. But yeah, how fast your property is getting booked, how fast you are getting the bookings. And also by booking velocity, once you know how fast you get bookings in a weekly or monthly or whatever analysis what you do, it's really important to know that those bookings in which period are falling in. If there is any period where you have to pay more attention, maybe there is a demand for a weekend, or there is a special event, which of course the dynamic pricing tool will already increase the rates, but maybe you want to add an additional premium on those very high demand periods.
Yeah. Got it. Now I know, at least as far as I know, you don't look at booking velocity or pickup in PriceLabs, although there are places where you can see it in PriceLabs, but you do it outside, Adrian, in an Excel? Or
we have an internal report, Richie, and also we have another KPI to measure, let's say, the success of the property, which is the MPI, the Market Penetration Index, which shows how the property is doing respect compared to the market. What is our fair share respect to the market? And this is also a great indicator to know if you are getting the same bookings as the market, or you are underperforming or overperforming respect to the market.
got it. And what do you look at when you say like the index? Like what are you comparing? The ADR or the pickup, or
so
what are you comparing?
The occupancy rate for the future, which tells you and which actually gives you a great idea. If you, for example, your MPI is too high with respect to the market, then that's a clear sign that you are underpriced. However, when your MPI, this index, is lower with respect to the market, that means that you are underperforming with respect to the market and your rates might be too high. So that's an indicator not only for the occupancy rate, but also for the rates.
Got it. So you're comparing your occupancy to market occupancy and trying to do that.
Exactly.
Got it. Very cool. I'm going to let in on a secret here. Very soon, I think in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you'll actually be able to see your occupancy and market occupancy within PriceLabs very easily, just by hovering over some numbers. Like on the main screen where you see 7-day, 30-day, 60-day, on that number, if you would hover over, you'd also see what your occupancy is and what market occupancy is. So we'll make the work a little bit easier for you, hopefully. Cool. Anything else that you guys do, Eduardo? Anything else that you guys want to add in terms of setting up a property or monitoring a property or talking to customers?
Well, I just wanted to add just a little trick for everybody to be aware of, and as much as pricing is super important, I think there's some other non-pricing components that we take into account, like when Adrian was saying that, okay, we're not seeing bookings. Sometimes before just jumping and saying, okay, let's lower the prices, it could be also that you chose the wrong picture, right? Or that your text is wrong, or you need to change the title. So there's all of these other non-pricing elements that you have to keep in mind, because you could be underpricing your property without need. You have to make sure that all of the other elements are properly aligned before you start reducing prices. So I think that's something very important. Yeah, and yes, I mean, the market penetration index for us that Adrian mentioned has been critical for us, because we do want to know, for the month of January, if we are currently in Miami at 10% occupancy, is that good or bad? So if we can compare versus our competitive set, how the other properties around us are booked, and we see that they're booked already at 30%, well, maybe we are doing something wrong. Maybe we're overpriced, or maybe they jumped the gun too fast and they are actually underpricing, right? So it's some of those things that we have to keep that in mind. And of course, I know that some of those indexes come directly from PriceLabs. Others we've actually built API connections to PriceLabs on the back end in order to get some of those indexes. So there's some extra work that we've done there. But yeah, it's very, very important.
Very cool, very cool. And we're going to make some of these available on the front end as well. And in case people who have joined in, and if you're already a PriceLabs user and you did not hear Oliver, who's also here with us right now, diligently answering all of your questions. But if you did not hear Oliver's webinar from 2 weeks ago about how to use portfolio analytics, do go give it a listen. He covered in great detail, what do you look at in terms of your property? If you're not receiving a booking, what all things that you should consider? How do you look at your spacing or your pickup versus market pickup? Oliver, if you can drop a YouTube link of that in the chat as well, so people have it. Cool. Eduardo, do you want to take us through the key takeaways and summarize this whole thing up?
Yeah, absolutely, with pleasure. So thank you for this, Richie. Thank you, Adrian. We hope that you are getting some interesting insights. I know there's a lot to cover. But I'll just try to very quickly summarize some of the things that I heard you guys mention. First of all, you have to be very careful when determining your competitive set, right? And especially you have owners that are very romantic about their properties and say, I want a minimum rate of 500, whereas the market does not justify that. So we have to be very careful when defining your competitive set, because that's the baseline of good pricing strategy. You also have to be very cold when deciding your rates. You have to be very analytical and not let your feelings get in the way. And of course, our clients are dealing with their owners, right? And that's where we think data is very important, and giving a good presentation and explaining the logic behind the rates. Minimum rates, very important. And keep in mind that you could have different minimum rates depending on the time of the year. So you could have a minimum rate for the next few low season months, but a different minimum rate for your high season. So don't just set one minimum rate, but it's important to keep that in mind. You also mentioned how far out windows, booking windows are important. So there's no rush in booking something for January or February. Maybe set your minimum stays for longer booking windows higher rather than lower. Adrian also mentioned how important the cancellation policy was. Nowadays, with people very concerned about their travel plans and changes, cancellation policies can make a big difference in certain markets. So something to keep in mind. And of course, it's not just like set and forget. PriceLab is a fantastic tool, and you can get immediate increases in revenue by just setting things properly. But of course, like everything else in life, if you really want to be the one outperforming the market, the more time you put into it, the more focus you put into revenue management, the better results you can get. It's there's no way around it.
Absolutely. And we always say that pricing, and at least the way we think about PriceLabs, is it's a combination of human plus automation. Hopefully you're spending time doing strategic things and not manual labor. Like hopefully we are removing a lot of your manual stuff, and you can focus on strategic stuff so that you can manage a bunch of properties, right? Before maybe you could like if you're manually doing things, 10, 20, 30 properties, you're maxed out. But hopefully with PriceLabs, you can manage a lot more properties with ease, hopefully. Cool. We have a bunch of questions. I know we are 5 minutes over, but I see a bunch of people still around. Actually, just about everyone who had come in is still around. We will move on to questions. But before we move on to questions, Aranza, can I share my screen and quickly? Super cool.
You can share.
Okay. Oh, I did not realize that. My bad. Sorry, guys. Cool. So what I did want to give everyone a little bit of sneak peek into here is the market dashboard that Adrian was showing. It's going, the look and feel and the cleanliness and how you like some of the graphs, how those graphs work is going to change, which will hopefully make your experience of using PriceLabs a little bit better here and being able to draw out those insights a little bit better. But always, if you have ideas or anything about how to make anything in PriceLabs better, please send them to our support team. There's a, like, again, in the product, there's a question mark at the right bottom. If you type us, like, send us any message there, our product team, our data science team, all of us read it. Send us a message and we would work towards improving the product for you. With that, questions.
Yes, amazing. I'll jump right in, Richie. I'm gonna leave just this slide for anyone who has to go. They can just grab our numbers right now. Oliver will help us copy and paste it also into the chat, so that you guys can contact us and it's easier if you have to go, and we'll jump back to the Q&A because there's really interesting questions. But if you have to go, please contact us at, here in the information that we have here on the screen. And also we'll be going to the next few conferences displayed here in Florida, the September VRMA in San Antonio in October, and Expo RV in November. So we'll be really happy to hear you and to see you and to finally meet all of you guys. So if you have any more questions, obviously don't wait, contact us, but it would be lovely to see you guys there. So that being said, I will start reading out the questions.
And by the way, there's quite a few, Anansa. So just for those of you that ask a question, don't worry. We'll take screenshots of the Q&A and we'll get back to you individually if we don't get a chance to answer your specific questions. So no worries, all questions will be answered.
Yes, exactly.
Adrian, Aranza, if you want, I can just take the questions and I can ask Eduardo, Adrian, whatever, right?
Perfect.
Cool. Okay, this is for Eduardo and Adrian, right? Do you present a pricing strategy to owners? And and if you do, how do you actually, what do you tell them? What do you show them? Like, what's your strategy around that?
Yes. So, Adrian, you've been talking, let me give you a quick break. I'll take care of this one. Yes, we put together a comprehensive report that shows how the market has been performing, what are the expectations moving forward, how are different properties priced at, and therefore what is the minimum rate that we recommend, as well as what is the minimum weekly rate that we recommend and the minimum monthly rate that we recommend, because of course having weekly and monthly discounts are an important part of the strategy. So Adrian takes care of calculating all of those ideal rates, and then we present that to the property managers that we work with so that they can in turn present it to their owners. The shorter they are, the better they're explained, the higher your chances of having an owner saying, yes, go with it, right? We always say that the best owner is the one that wants to make a lot of money, because those are the ones that they're not romantic about the rates. They just want to see their bottom line grow. And we try to help them get to that decision.
And what do you do when they want a specific price?
Well, there's some property managers that are faced with that every day, right? People saying either I want to rent at $150 a night or I'm just not interested. And usually what we do is we keep informing them. Our account managers, start submitting constant reports to say, hey, we're not getting any bookings. It's been a week. And normally when we launch a new property, we always want to see a booking within the first 48 hours. Right? That's our benchmark. If we don't see a booking in the first 48 hours of us launching a listing, there's usually something that might be wrong, So we might wait a few more days. And then we contact the client again and we say, this pricing is simply not going to work. You have to trust us. You know, our goal here is to maximize your revenue long term. So communication is key, Richie. I think there's no way around that.
True, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Very cool. There's a question specific to Adrian here. Adrian, you mentioned that you benchmark against occupancy. Why occupancy and why not RevPAR?
So we benchmark against occupancy, but also we are analyzing the RevPAR of the properties, because at the end, the RevPAR is the revenue per available night. So it would be a RevPAR for short-term rentals. So that's the really important key metric to look at the end.
So you're using both. You're using RevPAR and occupancy.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. Got it. There's a question from Melissa about where can I find the indexes? Indexes are something that AngelHost team does. There are some things that you can find in PriceLabs. We'll follow up in terms of how you can look at your occupancy versus market occupancy, but indexes is something very specific to AngelHost team. With that, a related question, how often do you guys, AngelHost team, look at non-pricing elements? It sounds like title descriptions or like photos or things like that, Eduardo, that you mentioned. How often do you guys look at? Do you change them at certain frequency? Is there a logic? Is there something behind it?
Right. So most OTAs provide reports on how many times your listings are showing up, how many times are they showing up on the first page, what is the click-through rate that they have, and what is the conversion rate. So we download those reports directly from the OTAs. We do that every couple of weeks, and we keep track. You know, are we getting the type of click-through rate that we were expecting? It could happen sometimes that you think that your best picture is the one that shows the pool. Well, it turns out that everybody else thought the same way, and maybe the picture with the pool is not the one that is going to produce the highest click-through rate. So we then change it for the one that has the nice view, or the dining room, or the kitchen, or something else. So we do look into those things. We have a listing optimization team that does that on a recurring basis, because, like we said, pricing is a super important element, but the other non-pricing things are often not looked at carefully, and they can make a major difference.
Very cool. Very cool. Absolutely. Cool. This is, I don't know if you want to address this here or if they should contact someone. What kind of a fee do you guys charge, or how does it work if someone wanted to work with AngelHost?
Yeah, of course. So we can take this, of course, offline, and I'll be happy to answer that question. But just very briefly, because we're here to help property managers and property investors, we only take a 10% fee from the total. So that's a revenue model. So if the property manager does well, we do well. If you know, and there's no contracts or anything like that. So yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Can someone from like Eduardo or Adrian, what made you use PriceLabs?
I probably take that one too, Richie. We did, as you know, we did a very, very thorough analysis. We wanted the best tool out there, and at the end of the day, for us, the deciding factor was the tool that would give Adrian the best information, the best automations. And even though there's still work that we have to do outside of the tool, you know, we just found it incredibly powerful. So I'm not just saying that because, well, we're obviously still working with you guys, right? It's not because we have some sort of long-term contract that binds us to stay with you. We like PriceLabs. We like the results we're getting. We like the new additions that you're making. So in this world that is becoming more and more competitive, I think it's critical. I think if there's one key message for all the attendees is that you have to use dynamic pricing, whatever tool you decide to use, but you have to use dynamic pricing. Otherwise, you're going to be leaving money on the table. But we're very happy working with you guys.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much. Oliver, you're sitting too quiet. I don't like that. Here's a question for you. I tend to run full with most reservations in last 20 days. 6 rooms in a house in San Francisco, what are the most frequent customizations that people make?
Yep. So whenever I personally have a situation where I'm running 100% occupancy for the last few months, I start to think about, hey, are there discounts that I'm currently applying that I don't need to be applying? So if you've been reaching 100% occupancy, and let's say you have an aggressive last minute discount that's dropping rates by 30% for you to get there, I would start seeing if I can start easing off on that discount to say, hey, let's maybe pull that back to 20%. If people keep booking and you keep being full, let's ease that back to 15% and so on. So it's good that you're only getting booked within the last 20 days. If you were telling me, hey, I'm getting booked completely full 2 to 3 months out, I would be more worried, and I would say, hey, let's start increasing that base price to try to charge a little bit more, since people are booking my property quite a bit here.
The other thing that I would say is, if you're getting bookings last 20 days and if you're running full, you may want to look at your last minute discount and see if you want to remove those last minute discounts from PriceLabs or reduce them. Eduardo, I think you already answered that question, but what are the ways to work with AngelHost? Like, could you guys like review someone's settings or properties, or is it a 1 month contract? Is it a full year contract? How does that work?
Yeah, our approach to revenue optimization is a multifaceted approach. So we normally work with our clients where we literally take over the listing. So most of the times we have to recreate the listing, sometimes taking new pictures, writing new text. We take a very holistic approach to revenue management overall and maximizing the revenue of the property. So the typical clients that we work with approach us with a couple or maybe a portfolio of properties. So we go through a very deep analysis of all of them, making the changes that are required, and a lot of the times relaunching those listings on the OTAs, and then starting to monitor that on an ongoing basis. So yeah, and the way, as I said before, we don't force people to stay with us. Typically, all of the clients that we have tend to stay with us for the long run, because we take care of guest services, optimization, listing changes, and whatnot. We even produce statements for their owners, and we help with a lot of different things so that the property managers can really focus on growing their portfolio of properties and not having to worry so much about optimizing the performance of them. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Very cool. We're almost at an hour mark. We still have a bunch of questions left. There are still people listening in. This is very amazing, but I don't want to keep everyone here. If there are questions that are unanswered, we will get back to them with you on email. Yeah, and we'll be sending out recording of this webinar soon. Thank you so much for joining in. I don't know if Aranza, you have anything to close out, but yeah.
That's it. I think, thank you. You will be receiving an email very soon. And if you don't have, if your questions weren't answered, we have your information. So we will answer you via email. So that's amazing. So thank you so much. And we won't take more of your time. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.